name is Jenny Whitener, and I'm the CEO of Bridge Innovate. It's our pleasure to have you join us today to our webinar and podcast series led by Bridge Innovate. It's exciting to have you with us. Bridge Innovate continues to focus on empowering teams to think, lead, and problem solve differently. We offer a range of services from consulting services to executive leadership development programs to future lab sprints. And of course, if you just want to hang out in our really cool studio, we'd love to have you come and do some amazing work with us here at our studio close to Chattanooga. But today, what's really exciting is we have a special guest with us, Kevin O'Meara. Kevin is the Executive Vice President for Supply Chain and Enterprise Strategy at Shaw Industries. And he's going to be talking with us about igniting a transformation culture. I'm so excited that he is here with us today. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jenny. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, thank you. Maybe we could just start with you talking a little bit more about your background, because you really have been in the field of transformation for many years with many major corporates. So maybe just start by introducing yourself to our audience and tell a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Like most folks, when obviously I went off to college, and from college, I actually spent 10 years in the Army and did a lot of that over in Europe and learned a lot of leadership and ability to get people motivated while I was in the Army. But then spent a number of years at some key companies during transformation times. Schneider National was the largest trucking company in the United States at that time up in Wisconsin, and actually launched new business units and really transformed that into what is now considered 3PL and 4PL type services. Went to Whirlpool Corporation to run supply chain, but within that supply chain, it really was a transformation, because when I got there, we bought Maytag Corporation, and that was a major undertaking to kind of create the new company of the future. And now have been at Shaw for many years. In the last 3.5 years, have literally been focused on transformation of the company as our industry and our consumers and our customers change quite a lot. We're in the middle of that transformation as well.
Well, great. I mean, what an amazing background. When I was thinking about leaders in the arena that have amazing stories to tell, you came first to mind. Thankful for the fact that Bridge Innovates had a chance to work with Shaw Industries over a number of years, and with you particularly, because it's been amazing to watch the catalytic change that you've led at Shaw. And I'm sure if I was at Whirlpool, I would have seen it there as well. So thanks so much for being with us today. When I
We've
think
enjoyed the
about,
partnership.
yeah, when we, let's just kind of start at the beginning. When we think about transformation, so many companies today are in this continuous aspect of transformation, the market shifting, constant disruption, constant volatility. How do you define a transformation culture, right? Because if an organization can create a culture that supports transformation, much easier to adapt. So how do you define this transformation culture?
Yeah, I love the question, Jenny, because transformation is not an event anymore. Maybe it was 20, 30 years ago, but it's not an event anymore. It is how business is done. You're constantly looking at the market and what's changing with the market, what's changing with your customers and consumers. And that is just the business. That's the business we're in. And so the first thing I always come back to when we talk about a culture of transformation is curiosity. Everyone in the company has to be absolutely curious, get outside of their comfort zone, their personal comfort zone, and get outside the corporate comfort zone and really see what is happening and ask questions and probe and really research and look. So curiosity is key. The other one is to see reality as it is, not as you would like it to be. I think that is such a key statement around, someone told me once, it may have been you, Jenny, it's easier to move with the transformation than it is to fight it. And so reality is reality. People are changing. Consumers are changing. We're changing. We're all consumers. we're changing. So see that and be willing to move and not try and just protect things. Which then gets me to the third one, which is about respecting and honoring the past. You really have to make sure that if you're going to build a culture of transformation, people don't feel negative about it. They don't feel like, wow, you're telling us we made all these mistakes in the past. And no, you didn't. We did phenomenal things in the past, and now we're setting up and moving to the future. The next one that I always talk about is respecting and honoring your customers and your consumers. When you do that, your culture of transformation kind of takes off because you want to, and I mean this, respect and honor them. They have needs, they have requirements, they're changing, and you can either fight them on that, which obviously I don't believe is a good choice, or you actually help them in that process. And that's what I mean by respecting and honoring them. The next one is a selfless culture, meaning you put the market, your consumer, and the company before yourself, and the company puts its market and consumers before it puts itself. It's easy to get all wrapped up into what you believe you should be doing, but reality is the customer and the consumer choose that. And then the final thing is self and company development. So we always got to be learning. Our CEO talks a lot about we want to be a learn it all culture, not a know it all culture. When you're a know it all culture, you tend to resist transformation. When you're a learning culture, you learn about the whys, you learn about what's happening, you apply that, and then just naturally you do some transformation. So those are kind of the big six, I'd say, from a cultural standpoint.
Right. Amazing. Really helpful. Curiosity, see reality as it is, not protect, I guess, the way the current state is, respect customers, the selfless culture, and then continuous self development. You know, when you talk about that, it seems easy when you talk about it, right? When you just lay out, here's the six things, right? One of the things that I find interesting, I want to dig into just a little bit before we go on to our next point, is this see reality as it is. I think oftentimes it's difficult for us, especially the more senior the role, for us to be objective. We may have a lot of momentum in our past. We may have a lot of investment in a new initiative. We may have a lot of personal bias about what the market's going to do. How do you open up this lens of see reality as it is? Because that's no easy task.
You're absolutely right. It isn't. And it takes a lot of self-reflection and I would say company reflection on what truly are your biases. I continue to say to folks, it's not what I absolutely know that I don't know that's the problem, because if I know I don't know it, I will go seek it out. Just if I'm curious and those things, I'll go seek it out. What really can be dangerous is what you quote know to be absolutely true, but it really isn't true.
Mhm.
That's what's really dangerous. And that's where, your biases come in, where you just, how many times have you heard people say, well, everybody knows, and then they say something. It's like, well, I don't know that everybody knows that. I don't even know that it's true.
Right.
But I think, that is kind of what I always talk about when I try and figure out how can I break down that bias, break down that kind of we know it all and become a learn it all. A little tactic I kind of give people is when I talk to them about how to listen more is I say to people, when someone says something to you or you observe something that is dramatically different than what your intuition tells you should be happening, that's a massive, great opportunity to explore.
Right.
You could say, oh man, that's wrong, or that person doesn't know what they're talking about, or whatever. Or you could say, wait a minute, why would they think that? Why
Right.
would I see that and explore it?
Right. And one of the things I've observed about your personal leadership is the power of questions, right? That you're very thoughtful and very open about digging in and asking the question. And you can tell from the questions that you ask, you understand the market. You're coming at a position of question from understanding a broader view. And that really opens up the conversation with the team, right? And just gives them a chance to dig in and dialogue about that more effectively. So great. All right. Love these 6 attributes. We're going to take those home. Don't worry. I've got them written down. Let's keep going, because one of the components around transformation, let's say we embrace these 6 attributes you just talked about, but another big part is getting buy-in from senior leaders to go from here to there. Like,
Yeah.
how do you get that senior leadership team to buy in to the transformation that's ahead?
Well, this is a really critical question because intellectually, once we've done the things we just talked about, intellectually, most people know what to do. Now the question is, how do you deal with the heart, not the mind? And that's always the toughest part of transformation. First thing try and do is make sure people understand that there is huge risk of not transforming. When we're talking about transformation, a lot of times the conversation implied in the conversation is standing still is a perfectly reasonable solution to what we're doing. And almost always it's not. In fact, almost always it's the riskier solution. And we all know the stories, but the two companies that I come back to all the time, and you've talked to these stories as well, is Kodak thought standing still was absolutely the right thing to do and
Right.
protect their marketplace when they in fact invented the digital camera. They
Right.
actually invented it, and look what happened to them. So standing still was the choice they made, but it wasn't the risk. It wasn't the no risk choice. The second one, which is always fascinating, is a lot of folks don't know this one, but you know, Apple and Steve Jobs literally stole. I don't want to say stole because they didn't do it under the covers. I mean, they gave it to them. All of the GUI interfaces and everything that we use on our modern day computers today from Xerox. And why? Because Xerox thought standing still and copying pieces of paper was the low risk, better solution when in fact they could have transformed and they could own this market today, right? They could own it. I don't even know. I don't think I've never seen a computer branded Xerox. So it's really interesting that people do believe that standing still is an option, and I would suffice to say it is the absolute riskiest option for almost every company. The
Absolutely.
second one is, the what's in it for me. I mean, we all know that. People got to understand what's in it for me. Um, the third one is, and I use this all the time in our company, is have we determined that working the way we work today on the things we work today, just do it a little bit harder and maybe sweat a little bit more? Will that get us where we want to go? Probably not. And if it's not, then you got to get into this kind of transformation, which then talks about you got to paint a vision of the future. What does this future look like? And the final thing is, redefining who you are, and that helps with buy-in. So, for example, and I just took these off of the web in preparation for this. Kodak thought they defined themselves as a manufacturer of cameras and film, mostly film. That's what they did. Instead of defining themselves later on, what I think they did is they're making memories.
Right.
When you define yourself that way, you then no longer are stuck to the past. You're like, well, how do I make memory? I thought Dunkin' Donuts, which this is the most fascinating one I think should be studied everywhere, is a donut company says America runs on Dunkin', like a donut company, right? But it's about we run on it, like we need it. We need
Every
what they
day.
serve for food. We need what they serve for drink. We run on it. And then Walmart with the save money and live better. What you notice in all of those is they don't talk about, like, Walmart doesn't say we will be the greatest retailer with the best stores or anything like that. They just say we're going to save money and live better, which allows you and allows people in that company to look at different ways to help people save money and live better. So I think when you do all that, you get a lot of buy-in from executives at that point.
Yeah. I love it. I love that you have this multifaceted pathway to getting buy-in because I think oftentimes people just do one of those actions,
Yeah,
or maybe two of those actions. So I think this buy-in portfolio almost that you have, it's really powerful. I particularly like this concept that you have around the risk. What happens if we don't do anything or if we stay steady state? In fact, one of the change simulations that we run as a part of our leadership development program, it gives people this opportunity to work for a fictitious company and build out a change plan. And one of the tactics that they could choose to do is called a disaster scenario. And depending on the culture of the company that leadership team comes from, many of them are like, oh, we don't want to do the disaster scenario. Oh, it's just going to sound really negative. I'm like, is it real? Is it
absolutely.
real? Go back to your very first point. See reality as it is, right? Put that up there. Let's don't do the smoke and mirrors thing. Let's just be very real about this. And I think oftentimes we're fearful because it might appear negative to have these risk discussions, which are really important, but especially with the fact that you put it in the portfolio. It's not only talking about the risk. You're talking about what's in it for me. You're talking about like living with the Duncan. I mean, you're talking about it from a customer standpoint. What will the impact be? Making memories. What is it the customers are we getting for us? How do we open up the aperture and think more broadly about what we bring to the marketplace? So fantastic advice. Thank you for that. When you think about mobilizing transformation, it's okay. So we've talked about the fact that we're going to look for this culture, nurture this culture. We've talked about getting the leadership buy-in because in my perspective, transformation always works best led from the top, not from the bottom, especially if it's significant. Then once we get that agreement, how do we mobilize and sustain kind of that change of transformation? That's really hard. Sometimes we just give up, we get tired, and we just let it go. How do we get the sustaining and mobilizing of it?
It's a great question. And I've heard people actually say, this is what's called the messy middle. One, you generally can get people conceptually excited about transformation until it actually hits them personally, like they have to transform. Then all of a sudden you get a little bit of resistance. And so now you're in the middle, you're in this messy middle. They see the vision of the future and they know they kind of want to go to that beach, but the beach they came from still pretty close and they can go back, or they believe they can go back. So you're in this middle. So what I believe is a couple things. First thing is communicate early and often. You have to be out front. If you're a transformational leader, especially if you have a title of transformation, you've got to be out in front and talking to people and being where the action is with them at their site, answering questions and talking with them. And you got to do it often. Some people will say to me, and this is just my own personal belief, some people will say, well, you don't want to really communicate anything because you don't want to make them afraid. Don't communicate anything until you have something of substance that what you want them to do. And I'm not a big believer in that because if you don't communicate, then people will fill the void. They'll be like, wow, there's this guy and he's working on this transformation. He's got this team and oh boy, and you can't imagine the stories that can be created there. So I think that one is big. And when you're doing that, and we talked about this up front, because the same as paint a picture of the future. What does that beach look like on the other side? Make it compelling enough that they're going to want to go through the messy middle and get to the other side. And you can paint that picture. Show them where they fit into in this and be honest with them. So any kind of transformation, you're going to get into a situation, I can assure you, where there will be some people that have a skill set that is no longer really applicable for what that future is going to hold. Well, how can we train you? How can we teach you? How can we help you get what new skill sets you need to be involved? But be honest with them. Don't, I've heard people say like about AI all the time, people say, oh, it won't replace people. Well, guess what? It will replace people. in certain jobs, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a bunch of other jobs that are opening up with different skills and needed. And that's what we have to do. The fourth one that I always think about, and this is in, our ADCAR change management and all the other different change management ways, is do a really good stakeholder analysis. Most companies, you can identify people almost by name. How do you need to communicate to them? What is their bias? What are they going to be interested in? If you're talking to the CFO, you better be able to talk to him or her about how this is going to financially help the company, right? I mean, because that's just their nature, right? If you're talking to the head of sales, you want to talk about how this is rooted in customer centricity. And because it's rooted in customer centricity, this is going to help that person sell more. So you got to really have that kind of stakeholder analysis. And then the final thing I do is just come back to this whole thing about, the risk of standing still. I mean, I can't overemphasize that message both at the executive level and inside the company. It is not an option in most transformations, most things. It is not an option to stand still.
Right.
Now, some people choose that, and let's use another example. Let's use the Nokia example with the iPhone. Let's use the example of we've all seen the YouTube video where the Microsoft executives are laughing at the iPhone. Who would ever buy a phone without a keyboard and spend $500 on it? Oh my God, who would ever do that? Well, guess what? Most of America is about to plunk down about $2,000 for the newest phone, and it hasn't had a keyboard since it was founded. So standing still didn't help those folks.
Right. I love it. I love this concept around mobilizing these elements that you've given us. One of the things I want to call out is you talked about this compelling story, this compelling vision. Like, where is it that we're going? Why is it that we're going there? You even talked about getting the connection. What is your role? How will it impact you? Getting that personal connection to that future state. I think that many times people launch that in the initial transformation. They have a big PowerPoint presentation or maybe a video from the CEO, whatever, and that's it. And in fact, we have to hear it again. We have to reignite our passion about it. We have to reignite our energy about it because change is hard. Change takes energy. And I think this compelling story, how I fit in, and then what I'm hearing you talk about with the stakeholder analysis is that, aligning it to what their needs are, aligning it to what's important to them, where they see how they fit in to the future. They see the value of where it's going. And all this conversation, think about how human what we just talked about is. I think oftentimes in transformation, people are like, oh, it's this big work plan, and it's these big tactics and these big, key milestones and all, and that is important. But all the things you just talked about were very human in nature. They're around getting the understanding of the future state, understanding the risk of where you're staying now, making it real for each of those stakeholders. What is their role? That's very human. It's a completely connection to the human beings that really mobilize the change.
Yeah, and I'd say this that you bring up, you've highlighted on the key point is the person I believe to be the best at this is a gentleman I worked for up in Wisconsin for years. And if you asked him what he's trained in, it isn't business, it's psychology. That's what he's trained in. And he knew, I mean, he learned business over the years, and he was a great business person, don't get me wrong. But man, did he know the psychology of people and how to do that.
Interesting. I was talking to a leader a couple weeks ago, and this person was telling me about how frustrated they were with their team. And they were trying to get some change mobilized, some big shifts going. And I said, do you think they see the platform burning as brightly as you do? Did they understand the risk? Because he was going to these meetings just like almost in a fervor, like, why aren't we making faster progress? Why aren't we doing this? And I'm saying, I don't think they know that the platform is burning. You
Right.
know, right? They don't understand the risk. Maybe you guarded that too much, right? I don't want to like have everybody jump ship, but I think we have to, like you said, we have to be real. We have to really talk about that. So let's continue on the discussion. We've talked about transformation in a lot of different arenas, but how do you measure success of transformation beyond just the traditional key performance indicators that you would see on a work plan?
Well, I talked about being out there and communicating often. You cannot, this is not an office job per se. You don't do that. And what I think about is when I see people that are genuinely excited about what they're working on and genuinely excited about it. And I know that because they can't stop talking about it. Like you see them in the hallway and they want to talk about whatever it is, their part that they're working on. They want to ask you questions. Maybe it's a probing question. Maybe it's a question they don't quite understand or quite know where you're coming from, but at least they're asking and they're vocalizing it and they're talking. When I see that, I start saying, okay, we're moving it. This thing is moving and it's absolutely moving forward. If people are hunkering down, or people aren't volunteering to be on different work streams and different things, if they're not willing to get outside their comfort zone, then I know we have a problem because there is no way a transformation can take place without the vast majority of the people engaged in it. And they got to be engaged. So I look for those I'll call non-measurable things. I look for that. In fact, the great John Bogle used to say that not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And and I really do believe that. Not everything that counts can be counted. And in fact, this part of it, tough to count. Everybody wants to figure it out, engagement surveys and this and that. They want to bring it down to numbers, but you got to get out and see. Are people excited?
Well, one of the things I again go back to the human element and also speaks to your leadership, right? You're looking for cues if the change and the transformation are being mobilized. You're seeing people in action. And if I know you, you're affirming them, you're acknowledging them,
Yeah.
thanking them. You're just reinforcing that movement that you want, that you're saying, thanks for championing the change, or you're doing a great job. You're giving that sort of encouragement of the heart. This is hard work and you're doing a good job with it. And that makes a difference, the leadership that comes to play to observe those things and then to reinforce them because it gives people energy, right? Change is hard and it gives them energy. What advice do you have generally for leaders who are thinking about launching or advancing their transformation approach?
Well, I mean, I think, all the things we talked about, a couple things I would add is spend time thinking and planning, either you and your small leadership team. I think you taught me this once about, if I have 50 hours to do something, I'm going to spend 48 hours thinking and planning about it. And I got the quote wrong, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, dig
But
into the problem.
yeah, thinking and planning is really critical, which leads you to that stakeholder analysis. Know who the naysayers are going to be. In fact, I don't want to call it a trick, but one thing is if you know of a naysayer, put them on your team. Put them on your team. That'll be good for two reasons. One is they'll get a behind the scenes look of everything that's going on and they may change their mind, or they may challenge you as the leader, right? And you want that challenge because it is very easy to kind of, even if you're transformation, it's easy to get all, lathered up about the transformation when in fact somebody might need to help you with that. And I think that's critical. The third one, and this is really important, I have a great relationship with our CEO. He's probably the brightest and greatest person I know and have known my whole business career, is your boss has to be all in. Like you get a city, if you're put in charge of a transformation effort, whether it's enterprise wide or whether it's within your area, you got to have a heart to heart with your boss. Because one of the things you'll learn is you will take some arrows. You will take some arrows. And in fact, and this is the advice of the gentleman from Wisconsin who he told me this when I was getting into this part of work, is he said, if you're not taking them, then you're not transforming anything. So that's just the nature of the beast. And your boss has to be right there with you. Has to be right there with you. They can't retreat. I've been in the military. You always respected the colonels and the generals that were out with you at 2 o'clock in the morning when it was freezing cold and you were standing in frozen mud, and they were there with you. They were the leaders you wanted to be around, and that's true in business too. You want that. So that would be my advice. In fact, that third one, I would say, the one with your boss.
Yeah.
If you have that heart to heart and you sense that that person isn't all in with you, then think long and hard about yeah.
I'm 100% with you. It just becomes, a huge pill of frustration, or it compromises your ability to really lead the transformation if you're not aligned on that. 100%. I've seen it a million times. But
Yeah.
thank you for your wisdom. Thank you, Kevin, for
Okay.
your time. I know how valuable that is. I know you. And so it's been great gift for you to share your story about transformation and share these words of wisdom. I know our participants appreciate it. I know that others, as they listen to the podcast series on Leaders in the Arena, will love it as well. So thank you so much for being with us today.
I really appreciate it, Jenny. It's always a pleasure. Always a
Great.
pleasure to be with you.
Good to be with you too. We have more coming up on Leaders in the Arena. We have a special overview program of our Future Ready Leader series that we're launching now at Bridge Innovate. That's coming up on September the 23rd. And also a special program on October 3rd called The Hidden Catalyst, Group Intelligence and Innovations from an amazing leader on the West Coast that's doing a lot in co-design and group intelligence. So join us at bridgeinnovate.com to register, and we hope to see you again very soon. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Bye.